The second proverb in Michy's book, Opening Concepts, is called Make an Outfield Point. And just to explain what we mean by that, if you're used to these videos I've been doing, the way XG always sets it up for me, I'm always bearing into the bottom right. So the outfield is basically the bits that aren't the home board. So our home board is the bottom right quadrant. So the bottom left and the top left in particular, they're called my outfield. So they're not really kind of essential inner board points, but they're still useful places to have. And Michy's argument is that in making an outfield point, if you make a point in the outfield, and I'll show you what I mean in a second, you've got is a safe way of storing builders, which can then be used for making inner board points. It's a point that will block your opponent's back checkers from escaping because they can't land. And if you say have the 11 point and your opponent rolls a 6-4, they can't escape. The point you have can become part of a prime, particularly if it's the 9 point. And it's also a safe landing point for bringing our checkers home. I added that last point in, but I do like that. If we're trying to bring our checkers home against, if our opponent has what's called a holding game, having a few of the outfield points on the way gives us landing spots to safely bring everybody home. So here's an example of where we've made an outfield point. If you look in the bottom left quadrant, I don't know if you can see the number 9 there at the bottom, but you'll see that we're white, and you'll see there's one of the points has 2 of our checkers on it. So we've just made that point. It's our 9 point. And it, as I said, it serves a lot of functions. Those 2 checkers there can become builders for making inner board points later on. We can bring them in and make a point in our home board. It's a handy blocking point. So were our opponent to try and escape and wanted to kind of land there where they can't, we've blocked it. We hold it. We've possibly the start of a bit of a priming game going on there. It's not quite a priming game yet, but we could make a prime. We're to roll a 6-1 or something. We'd already have a 4-point prime. And as I said, later on, if our opponent were to move up to their 5 point, we'll say, or our 5 point, and we're trying to bring checkers home, it's a very handy landing spot to bring checkers in, and we can land on there, because we know if we were to roll, for example, a 4, we could bring a checker down from our 13 point from the middle there, and it'd be safe to land on. So Michy's book, Opening Concepts, just touches on this one proverb very quickly and very briefly, and he just gives one example. So this is the only example he gives in the book, where we're white as usual, but bearing into the bottom right as usual, and we've rolled a 6 and a 2. And he says, well, the priority here is the 2. We can use the 2. If you look at the top left, our 4 checkers and our 13 point there, we can bring one of them down with the 2, and we've made an outfield point. We've all the advantages of the outfield point. And with the 6, there's no really good 6, but just from moving from our 24 point to our 8 point is the best option there. Might get hit, but we can always hit back. But the key to that move was making the outfield point. That was the only example he gave in his book, and it's probably the shortest of all the proverbs he does in the book. But I just came across Michy again talking. He was on a seminar with the Women of Backgammon series as a guest speaker, and he was giving a series on the opening concepts, and he gave a couple of other examples which I think are worth use just kind of looking through now. So the first of all is how to play a 4-2 here. So you might like to, if you want, you can pause the video, and assuming you've unpaused and decided what we might do, well, you might be forgiven for thinking, well, look, let's run our very furthest back checker. We could run that forward with the 4 and take, if you look on our 15 point, we have a single checker there, and the 2 brings that onto our 13 point and makes it safe. You might be forgiven, well, look, it's a move. It's a bit passive, hasn't really achieved anything. So let's just go back there, and bearing in mind that this proverb says, make an outfield point. Let's go back to that lone checker on our 15 point, the single checker up the top left quadrant. There's 2 single checkers, the one's on the 15 point. If we were to play that down with the 4, so move that forward with the 4, it comes down to the 11 point. We can make that safe by taking one of our checkers on our 13 point and moving it down. And now we've done what Michy wants us to do. We've made the outfield point, we're safer. Yes, there's a couple of our blots left lying around, but we have the long-term asset of having that And you'll very often in the opening, you'll hear players talking about having long-term assets. We've now got that long-term asset of the outfield point and our 11 point. And to do anything else, I just put that through XG. Anything else is a significant blunder. We have to make that outfield point. So moving on, I thought the other example that Michy gave, well, why don't we do? He gave them to the Women of Backgammon series as a sort of test yourself. So let's just test yourself with this and say, how would you play a 5 and a 2? And if you want to pause the video and think about it, and again, assuming you've unpaused, well, we've options. You might be forgiven for thinking, well, we could come down from our midpoint on the 13 point there on the top left with the 5. That checker comes down safely, and maybe we could split the back checkers with the 2. But there's a couple of things in this. First of all, if you look at the top middle, the 2 piles of black checkers on the top middle. So black's 6 point is our our 19 point, and black's 8 point is our 17 point. We've got the 2 big stacks of checkers there. And when our opponent has 2 big stacked points, it's never a good idea to split our back checkers, because they're looking to do what's called a blitz. They're looking to kind of come in and hit us where they can at all. They've nothing to lose, and they're looking to play that sort of aggressive game. So by splitting, we're giving them shots at us. So that's never likely to be a good deal. But let's go back to the start. And Michy used a nice phrase in the seminar that I thought looks as well. He said, look, making the 11 point. So again, bottom left quadrant. Why I'm being so kind of clear about this, I'm not sure you can see the numbers, but we've the 2 single checkers there, and one of them, the one closest to the pile of 4 black checkers, is our 11 point. And Michy's point is making the 11 point is our priority. So we can come down with the 2 and make that point. And then he says, and then we think about the 5. And so it's a good tactic sometimes in backgammon to say, well, look, what's our priority move? And having done that, what do we do with the other dice? And you could be forgiven. I certainly look at this and think, well, look, that other lone checker, if I move that forward 5, if our opponent doesn't roll a 3 or a 4, a couple of other doubles, we're in a really strong position to make our golden point, our 5 point. So, that's possibly what I would have done. But Michy says, no, the correct move is come down. Yes, we make the 11 point. But then we hit. From our 6 point to our 1 point, put black in the bar. It deprives black now and loses half a row because they spend half a row getting out of it. Moving forward in the 5 point, our opponent had, I counted as 22 shots. This way they've only got 11 possible shots, so they can roll, they have to roll a 1 to hit us. It does put our checker a little bit far forward for my liking, but the key thing is it's stopping our opponent having a second go. And again, looking at this, what XG says, the top 2 moves, whatever we do, we have to make our 11 point. Moving from our 10 point to our 5 point that I did, it's not a disastrous error. It's 28 millipoints is not a huge seismic error. Hitting is the correct play, but whatever you do, we're making our outfield point has to happen. Now, I just want to finish with explaining that when I first read this book as a beginner, it caused my PR to jump and to go the wrong direction, and I got this proverb wrong, and I thought it's a good example of just explaining how Michy's proverbs work in general. I read it, I'd said, right, you make the 5 points, fair enough, and then it said make the outfield point. And I thought you had to make an outfield point. So I was reading this make an outfield point as a very direct instruction. So I was going, right, how can I possibly make an outfield point? And I was ignoring other better options because I thought Michy wanted us to make the outfield point. So you make the outfield point and now you've done another step on your way to success in this game. And it's not like that at all. These proverbs that Michy gives are just things to think about. And sometimes you've better things to do than making the outfield point. So if you remember what we said in one of the kind of preliminary videos before this series, the first thing 19 times out of 20, probably 99 times out of 100, if you can hit your opponent in the outfield, do that. That's probably your priority. The second thing is, if you can make a good innerboard point, do that. Because that's, again, not just a long-term asset, but a long-term asset in the place where we want to have our long-term assets. Making the outfield point is just another good thing you can do. So the mistake I made was I was looking at these proverbs as rules, and in backgammon, in every rule there's exceptions. But the reason Michy uses the idea of a proverb, he's trying to get across to us that it's not a hard and fast rule. It's just this is something you can look to do, that if you have nothing else to do. So it's not the case that you must make an outfield point above all other things. It's just if you're not sure what else to do, and there doesn't seem to be another opportunity, making an outfield point is a good thing. So it's a good thing to do, but just don't get as hung up on it as I did. So that's it from this thing. We'll be back to Michy shortly with a third proverb. He said he's about 16 to 18 proverbs in the book Opening Concepts. We're going to go through a little video in each one of them, and with each of them, for instance, with the first proverb about the importance of the 5-point, I'll be doing more videos about, well, what does Bill Roberti say about that, or Mark Olson or other players say about that. But I'm going to go through Michy's proverbs as well, one by one, just so that we cover everything that he said, because really we are going to work our way through the book. So another video coming up very shortly about, I suppose, Michy's third proverb, fighting for a good point. But for now, the first thing we're looking to do is just, if you have a chance, make a good outfield point.